Okay, I have to say, looking at the notes for today, I did a double take.
I can imagine.
We're looking at a theory that says Japan's most sacred ancient text, the Kojiki, is basically the world's oldest piece of clickbait.
And not just clickbait, specifically a Kotatsu article.
Right.
It's a really provocative way to frame it, I know. But the more you dig into the research here, the less it feels like a joke.
And the more it feels like a serious critique of how history itself gets written.
Exactly. We're looking at a transcript that draws a straight line from 8th century mythology all the way to the marginalized history of the Tohoku region.
And somehow lands on AI matchmaking for the dead.
It's quite a journey.
It is a wild trajectory. But before we get to the, ghosts and the AI, I want to push back on this clickbait idea for a second.
Okay.
Because when I think of the Kojiki, I think of, high courts, solemn ritual, the very origins of the emperor. Calling it a Kotatsu article feels a bit...
Dismissive.
Yeah, dismissive. Or maybe I'm just giving the canon too much respect.
Well, I think that's the tension the source material wants us to feel. To really get the comparison, we have to define what a Kotatsu article or a Kotatsu Kiji actually is in modern Japan. You know what a Kotatsu is, right?
Oh, absolutely. The low table, the heavy blanket, heater underneath. It's the coziest place on earth.
Right.
You get under there in winter with some mandarins and you are just not leaving.
And that immobility, that's the key. In modern slang, a Kotatsu article is a piece of journalism written by someone who never left that warm spot.
So they didn't go to the scene, didn't do the interviews?
Nope. They sat under the blanket, scrolled the internet, maybe heard some rumors, and just cobbled together a story. It's content farming. It's based on hearsay, not fieldwork.
Okay, so it implies laziness, a lack of verification. But how do you apply that to the Kojiki? This is from the year 712. They didn't have the internet.
No, but they had hearsay. Let's look at how the Kojiki was actually put together. The record tells us it was a two-person job.
Right, there was Hieda Noir.
A person with a legendary, almost superhuman memory, who recited all the myths and lineages. And then you had Ono Yasumaro.
The scribe, the one who wrote it all down.
Exactly. So it was basically a game of telephone. One person speaks, the other writes.
And crucially, neither of them went out to check the facts.
Precisely. They didn't travel to Izumo or Kyushu to see if the local folklore matched up. They stayed in the capital, nice and warm, and they synthesized a narrative.
A narrative that fit the needs of the Yamato court.
That's the political angle. This wasn't a history textbook. It was a project to legitimize the emperor, to prove the Yamato rulers were descended from the sun goddess.
It was a state-building exercise.
Absolutely. And when you're building a national myth from a desk, you care more about the story than the messy details. And the source points out that because of this Kotatsu style, the text is just filled with these weird continuity errors.
I saw those in the notes. There's a deity, Okuninushi, who has a really, really bad time.
He really does. In the text, he dies.
Yeah.
But then, a few pages later, he's alive again.
And then he dies again.
Yes. One part says he was crushed by heated rock. Another says he got stuck in a tree. It's like the writers couldn't decide, so they just kept both versions.
See, that's what I mean. If this were some perfect divine text, wouldn't they have cleaned that up? It does feel like a rough draft that got published by mistake.
It suggests they were just stitching together different local traditions that didn't really fit. They were grabbing content from all over to build their platform.
It's the ancient version of copy-pasting from two different Wikipedia articles and hoping your teacher doesn't notice.
Pretty much.
Okay, so if the Kojiki is the history of the winners, the central court writing its own story, what about the people who lost? The source shifts really heavily here to Tohoku, specifically Yamagata.
And this is where we get into the history of the defeated. Historically, the people of Tohoku were the Emishi.
The barbarians.
That's what the central Yamato state called them. But the conquest wasn't just military. The source makes this really compelling point that it was also economic and cultural. And it was all done through rice.
The rice narrative. This part actually bothered me a little bit because we think of rice as the soul of Japan.
It is. But it was also a tool of control. The central government decided that rice was the standard for all value. It was currency. It was tax.
If you grew rice, you were a civilized, productive member of society.
But here's the catch. Tohoku's climate back in the 8th century was not good for growing rice. It was just too cold.
So they were set up to fail from the start.
Exactly. The locals were hunter-gatherers. They lived on millet, hide, fish, things that worked for their environment. Then the central court comes in and says, your food is worthless. Your lifestyle is barbaric. You have to grow rice to pay us.
It's economic violence. You're basically defining a self-sufficient culture as poor just because it doesn't use your currency.
Poverty by design. That's the perfect way to put it. They rewrote the entire value system to make sure Tohoku would always be on the losing side.
But the source argues there's a weird upside to being the loser. This is where Yamagata comes in. It says that because Yamagata was politically weak, it actually developed a richer culture.
It's a paradox, isn't it? We always think unity and strength are the goal. But in Yamagata, the powerful Mogami clan was broken up. The region was fragmented.
Unlike other places like Satsuma or Choshu, which stayed strong and, eventually overthrew the government, Yamagata never had that kind of singular political voice.
And because they didn't have that strong central us versus them political identity, no one could impose a monoculture.
Which brings us to the ramen analogy.
The ramen map. It's the perfect analogy. Yamagata eats the most ramen in Japan, but every little area has its own completely different style.
Right. There's no one Yamagata style. There's Sakata style, Yonezawa style, Akayu style.
And that's the point. Because there was no central power saying this is how we do things, every little place developed its own flavor. The theory is that weak politics allows for strong culture.
You're not busy fighting a war, so you're free to just live and eat ramen.
It's a compelling trade-off.
Speaking of unique local culture, we have to talk about Mukasari-ema. This custom seems to be unique to this region, and it's haunting.
It's one of the most poignant traditions I've ever heard of. Mukasari-ema are votive tablets paintings that depict posthumous weddings.
So if a child dies young or unmarried, the parents hire an artist to paint them in a wedding ceremony with an imagined spouse.
It's a wedding that never happened for a future that was stolen.
The Newts compare it to ghost marriages in Taiwan, but this is purely artistic. It's creating a visual proof of a happiness that never existed in reality.
And notice the connection back to our theme. The Kojiki was a fabricated story to secure the emperor's future. Mukasari-ema is a fabricated story to secure a child's happiness in the afterlife.
They're both fictions, but they're fictions that serve a deep, desperate human need.
Which brings us to the novel that the source material mentions, by Saio Ichikawa. This writer takes the Mukasari-ema idea and pulls it right into the 21st century with AI.
This premise is fascinating and also kind of terrifying.
It is. In the book, people upload all their personal data, personality scores, preferences, their whole quantitative self.
And if they die, an AI uses that data to automatically match them with a partner in the afterlife. It's a digital, automated Mukasari-ema.
Grim, isn't it? In the real world, matching apps can be a nightmare. You swipe, you get ghosted, it's awful. But in this book, technology finally works perfectly, but only after you're dead.
Death is the only place the algorithm guarantees you a connection.
It basically automates the greeting process. But there's a detail in the novel that really stood out to me that sort of grounds this whole digital ghost story. The heartbeat CD.
Yeah, the characters find a CD that's just a recording of a heartbeat. The source connects this to that art installation by Christian Boltanski on Tashima Island.
That's the one. He collected thousands of recordings of real people's heartbeats. And it's such a powerful counterpoint to the AI matching.
Because an AI profile is just data, information.
But a heartbeat, that's visceral. That's the rhythm of life itself. In a world where we're all becoming digital profiles, Kotatsu articles of ourselves, the novel seems to be searching for that physical proof that we were ever really here.
That desperate need for something real. Which leads us to the heavy philosophy part of this. The source brings in Carl Schmitt, the German political theorist.
A bit of a jarring transition, I know.
When I saw Carl Schmitt next to ramen in the notes, I thought it had to be a typo.
But it actually explains the whole Yamagata situation perfectly. Schmitt is famous for one big idea, that the political is simply the distinction between friend and enemy.
So for him, politics isn't about policy or debate. It's about conflict. It's about knowing who you're willing to fight.
Who you're willing to kill and die for, yes. So politics equals division. But the source contrasts this with economics. Not just money, but the classical Japanese concept, kaizen,
which means governing the world and saving the people.
Exactly. It's closer to the idea of a marketplace. In a war, which is politics, I need to know if you're my enemy. In a marketplace, economics, I don't care. I just care if we can trade.
Economics connects people. Politics divides them.
And applying that to Yamagata, because they were politically weak, they didn't have that strong friend-enemy identity, they defaulted to the economic mode. They chose connection over conflict.
They chose the marketplace over the battlefield.
And this ties back to the protagonist in that novel. The character decides to have an unmoved heart. They deliberately refuse to be moved by things.
Why would anyone want that? That sounds awful, like being dead inside.
Because being moved, passion, anger, that fervor, is what leads you to pick a side. It leads to the friend-enemy distinction. It leads to conflict.
So staying detached, staying under the kotatsu is a defense mechanism. It's a way to maintain peace.
It's a survival strategy. We're always told to follow our passion. But maybe passion is just the first step on the road to finding an enemy.
That is a deeply unsettling thought. But there's one last twist in all this that challenges our ideas of truth and fiction one final time. The art forger.
Wolfgang Beltracchi, a truly fascinating case. He didn't just copy famous paintings.
No, he painted new works in the style of dead masters and then claimed they were lost originals. He was filling in the gaps in art history with his own fabrications.
He was creating kotatsu masterpieces. He sat in his studio, did his research, and created a history that people wanted to believe.
And people did believe. Experts authenticated them, museums bought them, they were moved by them. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable question of this whole deep dive.
If a fake story moves you, does it matter that it's a lie?
My gut reaction is yes, of course it matters. You can't just lie. Beltracchi was a scammer. The Kojiki is propaganda. Truth has to mean something.
Okay, but what about the Mukasari-ema? That posthumous wedding is a lie. The child is dead. The spouse is imaginary. It's a complete fabrication.
Right.
But would you go to a grieving parent and say, this painting is a scam?
No. No, of course not. Because the function of that lie is to heal.
Exactly. The source suggests that we might actually need these kotatsu narratives. We need the story to be better than the messy reality.
Whether it's the Kojiki creating a nation out of chaos, or a parent creating a wedding out of tragedy,
Or Beltracchi creating a masterpiece on a blank canvas, the truth, the cold, hard, crushed by a rock facts, might just not be enough for us to live on.
So the history of the defeated isn't about losing a war. It's about having the freedom to write your own stories when the official one just doesn't work for you anymore. That's actually kind of liberating.
It is. It suggests that authenticity might be overrated, or at least that it isn't the only thing that gives something value. Sometimes a well-crafted fiction, a view from the kotatsu, is what lets life go on.
Wow. We've gone from ancient myths to rice taxes to ghost weddings and art fraud. And the thread is that we are all, in some way, editors of our own reality.
We're all Hieda Noir, reciting the story as we wish it had been. And in the age of social media, that's truer than ever. We curate our lives, we filter out the bad parts.
We create a Kotatsu article of our own existence.
We do.
That is a thought to take with you. The next time you see a perfect story online, or even tell one about yourself, just ask, am I reporting the facts here, or am I just writing a really good Kotatsu article?
And maybe, just maybe, give yourself permission to write this story that helps you get through the night. There's a lot of cold reality out there. There's no shame in staying under the blanket sometimes.
I think I'm going to go find a warm blanket right now. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Check your sources, but don't forget to check your stories. We'll see you next time.